it's about time we actually got the Splatoon 3 Direct. And while I've watched it this morning, I couldn't actually do any sort of live reaction video to it, unfortunately, because it was at 6 a.m. for me. Not exactly conducive to doing something like that, for me at least. But we are going to go over the Splatoon 3 Direct. I'm going to try and avoid pausing it too much, just because I feel like that takes away a little bit. We want to try and watch it back and give some insight. And at the end, I actually want to talk about some information that came directly from the website that isn't actually available in the Direct itself. So why don't we just get right into it? We get a nice little look at probably what is supposed to be the same sort of setting that used for the first trailer of the single player mode.
Despite its old-fashioned appearance, it's seen enormous growth in recent years. It's also
The hub area in general looks a lot bigger than both Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2, which is nice because there's a lot to do here. They expand on it later, but there's a lot going on this time around. We can actually see there that the icon used for the ink tank is actually different. Yeah, we can see it has that little cap at the top.
Today, we'd like to share some new findings on these inklings, while providing summaries throughout. Of course, what goes for the inklings also applies to the octolings.
You get to see some use of some like emotes that you can do. So of course they're going to talk about Turf War. The thing with, obviously, we've already actually seen Turf War. It's actually that and Salmon Run are the only real modes we've seen. And here we get to see some footage of the maps that have already been shown off before, and they actually only really show the same weapons that are already shown off. We get another look at the spawn-in, and they're just going over the rules of Turf War, which we all know at this point. And then here we actually get to see a bit more of the stringer, which we didn't really get to see a whole lot of. And it actually looks like it paints a lot better now than it did the first time they actually showed it, where it was very questionable as to how much it would actually ink. Yeah, and just basic stuff. Here we get to see the squid surge a little bit more, used to pop up at the edge of ledges and the squid roll. Now in this, they actually, right here, and they address this, and we talked about it in a previous video. That right there. It was theorized for a while if it could parry and block damage. Now they just outright confirmed that it can. So we'll have to see how that plays out. So we've seen this one before. Untitled Alley looks pretty good. This one also looks pretty interesting. I'm actually super interested in all of the Splatoon 3 maps. They seem very vast and a lot of things. When I saw this one, I originally thought that this meant MAHI-MAHI was Surefire just not coming back, because this sort of fills that same void. And then they get to this. So we already knew Museum was coming back. That was a given. And it doesn't look like it's really changed all that much, but it's fine because its layout was good to begin with. We get Hammerhead Bridge, which is a personal favorite, and in my video where I talked about what maps I want to come back, Bridge was my #1 pick for maps that need to come back. So I'm really excited to see that one. And then we do see that MAHI-MAHI Resort does in fact return, and they actually keep the gimmick of the stage going down, which is really cool to see. I saw some people originally theorizing that it didn't come into Splatoon 2 because this might be not easy for the Switch to handle, which seems weird because the Wii U, which was weaker, could do it. But we get to see all the launch maps, and then we do see that Flounder Heights is coming back. Another map that I really wanted that some other people, not so much. And then we also saw another map that is brand new. Then here they actually go in and reiterate that all the weapons from the previous games are going to be making an appearance. And then we get to see, again, the stringer. A little bit more of this. And it definitely looks a bit better, and the fire rate looks a bit faster than it did in like the earlier ones. And then we actually get to see a new weapon class, the Splatana, which this one I'm actually super interested in. This is a really cool idea for a weapon. It's a melee that still shoots a projectile. Not like spreading ink projectile, like an actual projectile. Its damage seems very questionable, and then it has like a sort of like assassinate attack. I know there's some concern about its ink and how much it paints, not looking too hot, but we'll have to see how it actually plays. And we go into the specials. A lot of these we already know a whole lot about, like the whale here, we already see this before. So it's nothing too fancy or too new here. We do see it actually moving a bit more through the stage. And here's where we get a new one, a Tacticooler. It's a sort of kiosk-like thing where you can pick up sodas. And in here, they mention it boosts stats. They only really mention the speed. So it'll be interesting to see what other things this actually affects. And then the Wave Breaker here. This is underwhelming. This one, it works as a sort of echolocator from Splatoon 1 that can deal some damage, but it definitely, the fact that you can just hop over it definitely makes it pretty underwhelming. The Reef Slider, now this one, I'm interested to see if this can be canceled early. Like, can you explode early, or is it only at the end of the track? That makes it interesting. 10 missiles return, a one I know a lot of people on Twitter today were not too fantastic about. I think missile is actually probably one of the easier ones that they could make adjustments to. We also see other things like Inkstorm, a Booyah Bomb, and Inkjet come back. Those are all fine. I think missile being back is fine. Some changes to it can easily be made. And then also like the squid roll and stuff can make it a lot easier to dodge the damage. So I think it's fine that it's coming back. Then here we actually get to see that Ammo Nights and Sheldon's shop has changed, where instead of buying weapons with money, you now buy weapons with tickets. So yeah, leveling up and continuing to use the weapon. I imagine growing like your freshness level with your weapon also gives you these tickets, and then you can use them to buy whatever weapon you want. Or you can spend more to skip levels. Like in this case, spend a few more and you get a weapon early.
By the way, the Inklings and Octolings walking around town are pretty savvy about their fashion. Things like headgear, clothing, and shoes are just as important as weapons to staying fresh in Splatsville. Gear can be obtained in the shops around here. Each one is managed by an interesting shopkeeper. So let's drop in.
We get some new looks at some of the new shop owners. Basically, everything looks pretty similar in terms of design, but I guess they didn't really feel the need to change it. But we do see sub-resistance up, a new ability, making a sneak appearance here, as mentioned. And then it's interesting that they're, I mean, I guess, again, they didn't really have to change a whole lot. These shops are pretty basic. And we see sub-resistance up again. The icon for Inksaber main has changed. And then I saw a lot of people really into this guy's design.
It's owned by Mr. Coco. He might look intimidating, but deep down,
His design is certainly pretty high tier, honestly.
you're more than welcome to pick out gear based on its appearance. But they
And then we can see Intensify Action, another new ability that they'll touch on here in a bit.
take run speed up, for example.
And then we already know what Run Speed Up does. And then here, Intensify Action affects some of the abilities in the game. This one also, we don't really know what all it affects. They only really show it for Squid Surge, but they do mention it does other things. And then here, we actually get to see merch. And here is something we actually get to see that's really important. We can swap the sub with enough chunks. You can just swap the main of whatever piece of gear you want with whatever you want. And then here they've actually given the loadout option that was originally Amiibo exclusive is now available to everybody. You don't need an Amiibo, you can just save a loadout, which, surprised that that didn't become a thing sooner. It seemed weird to put that behind a paywall. And then here's the part that I'm sure a lot of people were super interested in, the actual online component of the game. And here we actually see that the ranked modes have actually changed to Anarchy Battle. And then we get a look at the ranked modes. Here there is one interesting thing that they don't talk about in this direct, but is noticed. The Rainmaker mode now has checkpoints, where once you place the Rainmaker on a pedestal, you have to actually wait, and then you can move it from there. So it'll be interesting to see how that impacts the mode. It definitely does a bit better job at stopping matches from only lasting seconds. And then there's a new type of ranked mode that's not similar, that's sort of similar to League Battle, but instead you do like a sort of solo ranked equivalent with teams. And then we get to see the private lobby, which seemed very similar, but there might be some new settings in there that they just didn't go over. So that will be something to mess with as well when the game actually comes out. Now, this is also an interesting aspect that I'm super happy they expanded on. The test range. They've done a lot to change the test range. And there is so much going on here now. You can do it while mid-search for a match. So like here, you're just waiting for a game. You can just spend that time in the test range. You can also see other people that are playing in the test range. They mention it can be people you've played against or your friends. So if you're just warming up before you start, you can see what your friends are up to. And in this case, you can join them in a turf war, or you can join them in a squad for some ranked. And then your friends can join you in the test range. So everybody can get some warm-up going before they actually start to play. That's actually really cool. I'm actually really excited to have this small, like what is seemingly insignificant area of the game be changed as just something that needs to have been changed. And then we get battle replays. This is a massive addition for people that want to improve. Not everyone has the ability to have a capture card and do stuff like what I do and other content creators do. So, but the people that want to be able to improve and learn from their mistakes, this is massive. And not even, like, there are some huge esport titles that don't even have this feature. Like Valorant doesn't have an ability to replay matches like this. And then you can also share these through codes or links to other people, which would only really, it's great for coaching stuff, things like what I do as well. And then we see here there's a new type of customization where players get lockers that you can add stuff into and design around, well, what you want to fill it with. This I'm a little bit mixed on because, I mean, it's cool as a concept, but I feel like there were so many people hoping that, like, apartments would be a thing, that this sort of seems like they saw that people were talking about, like, the idea of apartments, and then just like, oh, well, I guess we could give them something. It's not fantastic. I mean, I'll take it. It's pretty cool. And then they show here there's a specific shop just for buying stuff. So this will definitely be worthwhile for the people like me that have purchased everything in the game, but still have money. You could use that to just buy stuff for your locker. Even if you don't intend to use it, it's just more things you can buy to where the money actually still feels like it has a purpose. And then here we get some more customization talk. They talk here about the titles and the banners, and there is something to this that I'll mention later at the end, but we can see it. You can choose the titles, and it's similar to the titles you would get in Animal Crossing New Horizons. You can just select which ones, and then you can also change your win animation, which is interesting. And then they mention that those can also be purchased at this same shop for the locker stuff. And it's actually a part of a catalog. It seems like during the seasons that they have, there will be catalogs that have different specific things. And here they mention it's every 3 months or so that there'll be new catalogs. So you may miss out on certain things, like where there they show the Inkling dabbing. You might miss that out. Like you might not have that. So there might be some people that have the dab and you don't. So it's definitely an interesting way to have a similar sort of battle pass system that other games have, where there's these collectibles and cosmetic things that are behind playing the game, but not having it be paid. So it's interesting. And then here we get a look at a new mode, Table Turf Battle. It's a card game take on Turf War. I'm actually interested into how this really plays, and then if you can play this with other people. They'll show it later, but they only really talk about it being played against NPCs. So if you can play this against like real players, I'd actually be interested in this. This could be actually like a fun side event in tournaments. To have this I think would actually be kind of fun. And even if it is only NPCs, I would still have some fun with that. This would definitely be something I could see myself like wasting some time in. If I don't feel like playing ranked or whatever, I'll play this a couple times. But they do say that they're going to talk about it more at a later point. So who knows how it'll fully play out. But I'm definitely interested in the idea of it. And then we get to see some more of the Salmon Run mode. This, I haven't talked on it too much. Salmon Run is actually something that I do really appreciate, like its existence. I just wish that it had been, there's some things it's lacking. Mostly in endless mode, I would have preferred that. We do get to see some of the newer boss salmonid that they introduce, and then they actually talk on some more of the basics of Salmon Run. The idea of being able to throw the eggs is actually still a really cool concept that I'm surprised just wasn't a thing in the Splatoon 2. We're going to look at another new boss. This I don't really think this guy is going to be too big of a deal. It's there to provide a barrier for salmon that are inside the shield, but if it stays stationary like that, its application is going to be very limited. Unless it's like high tide, then that could be really obnoxious. And then we get the big shot here, guy who like chucks grenades essentially. And it looks like it uses the same sort of stuff as like the wave special. Definitely seems kind of underwhelming in comparison to a lot of the other designs for the bosses. But again, who knows? It might get super frustrating to play against at the higher hazard levels. And then we get to see finally what the giant salmon from that one trailer was. And it's a king salmonid. And it's like a end of game boss fight. They do mention here that it's more of like survive the whole time. But I wonder what would happen if you actually kill him. They don't really talk about it. They just mention surviving the whole time. So I imagine you'll probably get a bunch of extra golden eggs. But I I can see a lot of like really good salmon run attempts being killed off by that. And then here we actually see something that they lightly touch on. It's salmon run done on the actual maps themselves with the big run. And they mentioned that this is going to be a sort of rare event. I imagine these are probably going to have bigger and better rewards for doing them, because a lot of these maps aren't designed for this. So it could get hectic really easily. And here, again, we can see it. They sort of kept the same entrance to the story mode, which is kind of bland that it's literally the same entrance for the third time. But the actual story mode itself seems to have made a lot of changes in the right direction. The interesting thing, though, is that your character is once again called Agent 3, despite Agent 3 being the leader. I don't know, maybe that'll get explained. But in this footage, we can actually see that a lot of the challenges and the design of the levels in hero mode here actually look more based around Octo expansion. Because we can actually see some of these have actual challenges, and at one point, it was actually showing a level that the character only had access to a sub-weapon. And then we also see that the DJ Octavio is a part of this. And then they actually mentioned that it's the finale to wrap up. I think that that's probably wrapping up like an arc, essentially. Like, if they were to make a fourth Splatoon, it probably wouldn't feature the Octarians as the threat, I'd imagine. But that's just a guess. I'm definitely interested in the hero mode just because it looks like they did the right thing and going the route of Octo expansion instead of the standard hero mode we've been getting the last two games. The mailbox is pretty cool. I don't really use it. I've only posted like once on it, and the fact that once you post, the posts are gone and you can't like really look at them again, I thought that kind of sucked. The shoal returns, photo mode. This sort of exists in 2 with the amiibo, but now it seems like it's fully accessible no matter where you are. And then you can use those as decorations for your locker as well. Okay, Recon mode. This is actually a pretty big deal. Currently, Recon mode is only locked to maps in rotation, but now Recon mode is its own specific thing. This will make getting footage for stuff infinitely easier. It's a real pain to try and talk somebody into joining you in a private lobby just for you to record something for like a minute. So this will be super helpful. Then we get to see that the app is once again getting some life, even though the Nintendo Switch Online app is carried by Splatoon. Quite honestly, it is. Nobody uses it for anything else. In fact, they've killed off support for other games on it and kept Splatoon 2. You get to see some of the stats. And special wallpapers for completing like the paint, like turfing stuff. That's fine. I don't really use it. I just use a standard wallpaper on my phone. I don't use any special ones. But there might be people that do, and people that might care about that. And we all knew this was going to happen. We all knew Amiibo was coming, and the full back catalog of previous Amiibo exists. This is interesting, though. The loadout system stays an Amiibo, it's part of the Amiibo as well, despite the fact that they incorporated it into the normal game without needing the Amiibo. So why not give it a new function? Another thing we knew was going to happen, post-launch DLC. Splatoon sort of started it. Splatoon 1 was like a prime example of it and what people considered it done right. We get new weapons coming. And we kind of figured. And this actually also gives us a look at the Rainmaker checkpoint system. X-Rank is a post-launch update. And so is League Battle. These things won't exist at launch. Ranked as a concept you will be able to grind, and I will mention this again later in the video. You can still play ranked, and League Battle only exists exists at launch technically still as the Anarchy battle, but here we can see again the checkpoint system that Rainmaker is incorporating. Is now the pedestal has to go down a certain distance, and then you can pick up the Rainmaker and continue to move.
Who are you supposed to be?
And then this was expected. Of course, they would show off who the next like main hosts or the idols were. So this, though there was something unexpected here, it's actually a trio instead of a duo. And I've seen some people have some debate on their designs. A lot of people like Big Man a lot, but the others, I've seen some pretty mixed responses on them. I think that their designs are pretty cool. I actually like their designs. I think the idols have always had good designs, and this artwork is also really good. Their designs have always been pretty well done, I think, at least in my opinion. Callie and Marie are probably like the most bland ones out of all of them, but their designs are still pretty good. Here we get to see the news, and an important aspect of the news gets touched on right here that everybody's been asking for. The news is optional. You don't need to watch the news. It can play out in the corner, and you can opt into actually watching it. But it's not required. Thank you, holy moly. And then, of course, everybody knew that Splatfest was going to return. There was literally no reason why it wouldn't come back. It's a given. But what this leads into is actually the interesting part. We get to see that the whole place, and again, this might be interesting to explore with how much bigger the Splatlands area is, just how much is going on here. But there really isn't a whole lot to say. It's Splatfest. I mean, we all kind of knew that this was going to happen. But it's still cool to see it. Their dance moves are certainly interesting, though.
It's been confirmed that Splatfest will make a return. In these events, you pick a team.
It'll actually be interesting to see if you can affect what type of dance your Inkling or Octoling does during the Splatfest. And then they also, yes, announced that Splatfest actually this time will be split into 3 teams. So instead of now where you choose between one or the other, now there are 3 teams, which can be used as a way to sort of balance the fact that 1v1 is sort of simple. And then we also get a 3-team turf war battle. This one I'm actually interested in seeing because the leading team of the Splatfest is the team that gets 4 players, while the other teams only get 2. So the theory is like in this case, the blue and yellow team would focus on trying to ensure the red don't win at all. But I wonder if it'll just shift into like, well, one team just trying to prioritize only making sure that they win. I'm definitely interested to see how it works. In theory, red team should win because they have more people in general, but they also have 2 teams actively stealing their ink. So it'll be interesting to see if the dynamic of the team with the more players actually ends up being the superior team, or if they lose because there's now 2 teams competing for that space. And then here we get to see sort of what the news system looks like. I don't think many people are going to be looking at this, honestly. I think a lot of people are going to skip the news because a lot of people have been asking for it. But to cap off the Direct, they had to make an announcement everyone was expecting. There's a test fire. Now, it's not called a test fire. They call it the Splatfest World Premiere, but it's literally a test fire. It happens before launch. This happens on the 27th, Saturday at the end of the month. And this is, well, a Splatfest. And so with the new system, you get to pick between rock, paper, or scissors. And this will be interesting to play through to see how those 3 team fights go. I'm interested in seeing how that plays out. I'm also interested in what all will be playable here. I hope that at least one weapon from every class is playable, but I wouldn't be surprised if they once again kept it to 4 weapons and just picked like the splatter shot, the splat charger, the roller, and then probably like the stringer or something. I don't think that's what they should do. I think they should have at least one weapon for every class playable. That would make it a whole lot more fun to do, but you know that hundreds and thousands and probably a million people are still going to play this, me included. So look forward to videos on this. Those will definitely be coming up. And I'm going to be playing every weapon. If there's one of every weapon, probably not all of them, but if it's like a limited amount, you can guarantee that I will be having videos on each of them. So this is probably not the biggest thing from this. There's definitely a lot going on in this video, but that's something a lot of people were looking forward to. And that's one of the more exciting ways to cap off the video. Now, they do talk a little bit more. They go and mention a Splatoon 3 tournament that's going to happen the week of release for the people that won like the Summer Series tournaments for Splatoon 2. I don't think that that's going to be a huge deal for people that it's a huge deal to play it still early before the game launches, but the people that are concerned about like these teams that are going and competing having a sort of competitive edge because they get to see what's good before launch, it literally happens days before launch. So while yes, they get to play it and get to have an idea of what's good, they won't have an outright better understanding of the game just because they had it a couple days early. Where like with the Splatoon 2 World Championship, they had it like weeks ahead of time. Those people for that event were playing it weeks ahead and were given like a couple days to play it. So you could argue that they had a competitive edge at that point, but I think even then a lot of stuff was adjusted from when they played to launch. So now I want to get into some few aspects that were touched on the official website that weren't a part of this Direct. First one being that if you have a save data for Splatoon 2 on your Switch, you actually will get some bonuses going into Splatoon 3. This actually will impact your rank. Say in my case where I'm X rank in all the modes on Splatoon 2, chances are my rank will be closer to S+ when Splatoon 3 launches. This also ties in the fact that since X rank isn't available at launch, Splatoon 3 will revert back to how Splatoon 2 did it at launch, where you would go to S+, from S+ 0 to S+ 50. That's how the ranked will work until X is unlocked down the road. Another bonus to this is that you actually get 3 special tickets for using to unlock any weapon you want. These will give you whatever weapon you want. You just choose it from Sheldon's shop, and he will take one of those 3 tickets and give it to you instantly. Another change is that they will also be introducing rank decay. This means that if you don't play it for a prolonged period of time, that your rank will actually suffer as they progress into seasons. Now, they sort of do this now where if you maintain a high level in X rank, you're more likely to keep that same sort of level the next time a ranked season happens. But this, they're implying that an actual decay may happen where if you don't play ranked, your rank is going to go down because you aren't actively playing. This is interesting because, again, this is something that some major esports games don't even have. And then another thing is, while there was that test range for the actual multiplayer, they don't mention it, but there's actually going to be a Salmon Run test range as well for testing certain aspects of Salmon Run. So that'll be an interesting one to mess with as well. And then based on some wording on the website about these gear it seems like save editing and gear hacking actually won't be possible in Splatoon 3. So if you're one of the people that was very against it, it's looking like it won't be possible, as in their documentation they mentioned that your save and your gear and all of your stuff are synced to a server. So it's likely that that was incorporated to prevent people from modifying their saves and changing their gear. So it may happen down the road. There might be some people that figure a trick out or whatever, but it seems like for the time being, there's no chance of gear editing being a thing if there's going to be a constant sync of save data. And then a big one, they confirmed that main power-up and bomb defense DX are completely gone. Thank the heavens. Main power-up just was completely worthless, as like, I don't understand why it was added. It brought back something nobody wanted. It only gave damage up to certain weapons. It was just really weird, and it seemed like a really half-baked idea, and for a lot of weapons it really was a half-baked idea. And then bomb defense up DX being gone is actually worked into the sub resistance up, where sub resistance is sort of the same, where you get to mitigate damage from bombs, and it also affects toxic mist as well. The effects of toxic mist will be mitigated by using sub resistance up. And then I mentioned that when they were showing off the titles and the badges and stuff, that there was something there I'd touch on later. It's that you can actually have a different name in-game than your actual Switch account. So if you want to have a specific name used for your online, like Splatoon save, you can set a nickname and use that separate from your actual Switch account name. And that's pretty much it. This Direct was actually pretty impactful. There was a lot of really cool announcements here, and I'm super interested, especially for the test fire that's going to be happening. I do already see some people talking about how certain aspects weren't their favorite, and they're worried still about certain things, mostly pertaining to like the Splatana. People aren't sure how that's ink is going to work or how much damage it does. It's all stuff that we know is going to get answered pretty quickly once the game is actually in our hands, but it's still all speculation. Overall, this definitely answered a lot of questions people had and a lot of people's concerns about Splatoon 3, since overall Nintendo has been pretty quiet in terms of like promoting it up until this point, where it was just sort of brand announcements on Twitter. And so this eases a lot of the concerns people had and definitely gets people pumped up for it, and me especially, because I'm really looking to push my content in Splatoon 3 and really start to, improve it and do more stuff. So I want to hear what all of you thought of the Direct. What were some of your favorite aspects? What are you curious about still, even after seeing all this stuff? I want to know, so leave it all in the comment section below. So with that, I want to thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.